Let me put this into present mode. I kind of have a unique setup where I don't have a webcam at my home computer, so you're going to see me talking from a different place where you see me reading. So without further ado, I prepared kind of everything I'm going to speak. So I'll be reading from a script, and I tried to answer all the questions that are provided in the survey. Can I just get a quick thumbs up? Can everyone hear my voice okay? I do the students as well. All right, fantastic. Here's agenda. So good morning, families. It's great to see everyone. I've met each of your children. Now I get to meet with you. I know there are many people here who I've known for longer. I think in particular, Emma and Martina, I taught them how to cook in 2nd grade and they're in 5th grade now. I think I taught Flora how to cook and Grandi and a number of children. So it's great to see you. There are also many families I'm getting to know better and families that are new to La Scuola. My warmest welcome from La Scuola, and I look forward to getting to know you. Do not hesitate to reach out to me. So I'm happy to present or co-present with Janelle Spanier on a topic that is integral to daily school life and community. I want to respect your time and my time and speak directly about behavior management, our systems, and the role of adults in this presentation. If you're not muted at the moment, I'm going to kindly ask you to mute as well. We have a quick check-in from Janelle, and then we're going to jump in. So real quick, our agenda is check-in agreements. We're going to talk about the student success group, behavior management tools, methodology, and tiers of intervention, and talk about child development. All right, Janelle, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Great to see everyone. So I just wanted to share that the SEL portion of this is actually going to go, we'll do a deeper dive with a spotlight on January 8th. So I invite you all to show up there where you can learn more about our curriculum. But I do want to share that we are using the toolbox from Nueva, where I worked previous. And one of the tools from the toolbox that we've been integrating here pretty heavily lately is the check-in routine, which of course builds collective empathy. And we know if you can name it, you can tame it. Or if you can acknowledge a feeling that you're having or something, you're getting an emotional barometer on the group of kids or the people you're with. So this is something that we've been doing quite often, and I wanted to share with you the more recent one that we're doing is the gratitude prompts. And I know it's vulnerable and we're talking about discipline, but I want you to know that the SEL is like the hug around this, okay? So it's the proactive approach with building our community and it's also the repair, and the repair is so important, and the work behind it. So with the check-in here, if anyone's interested, and we don't, it is vulnerable. If you want to do one of the gratitude prompts, I welcome you there. If you can see it, something that you're grateful for. They say if the feeling, you want to bring up the feeling of a strength of yours or something money can't buy that you're grateful for. Anything, if anyone wants to do one, I would love it. Something that's funny. Recently with the kids, I know our motto is niente senza gioia, and something that's funny, let the kids pick a lot of cute stories that they share with your family. So it just does bring, it softens the tone of our community. And if anyone has one that they like to share, I welcome it. I would say for me, I'm going to say number 2, something money can't buy that I'm grateful for was this time with my son that I had over the break, and just being a mother is just the greatest gift I could ever have. And I know we're all parents here, and so I share that with you.
So I don't see any hands. I don't. So I guess in the interest of time, what do you think, Janelle? Should we
yes, that's forward? Fine. As long as you know when we do check in.
Janelle, I can share.
Oh, yes.
Just like, yes, gratitude. I'll use, good morning, everyone. My name is Fong Marcolongo. My son is in the 2nd grade class, Verdi. A strength of mine for which I'm grateful for is my joy. I'm extremely goofy. I've realized that it has helped me cultivate friends who love me for my humor, and it's really kept me sane in being a mom, because I'm really strict, but I'm really goofy strict. So it really confuses him all the time. So.
Grazie.
Thank you for being a risk taker, Fong. Really appreciate it. All right, so we're gonna continue on. So I think, can everyone hear me? Okay. Fantastic. Okay, I think a great place, I think a great practice, which we do in all classrooms from kindergarten through 8th grade, is agreements. So agreements are rules that everyone in the community agrees to. It's one of our whole group SEL supports and preventative measures. It's a practice done in many schools and one I've previously used in my public charter experience. All right. So I'm gonna ask that everyone, if you're not, if you can kindly mute, or Dunya, you should be able to mute as well.
Categories for the notaries.
Okay, thank you. So you should, if you find a participant, Dunya, you should be able to mute as well. So there we go. Thank you. So agreements are rules that everyone in the community agrees to. It's one of our whole group supports and preventative measures. It's a practice done in many schools and one I've previously used in my public charter experience. There's evidence suggesting it's going to become indelible in the field of education. I'd like to look at this agreement for our morning together. The triangle visual itself draws from Laura Smallaguchi's writing and is a cornerstone of the Reggio philosophy. The child is in the center with this teacher and families occupying a corner, and the environment as a third teacher. So this is just an example to look at. And then I think the 3 cornerstones that I kind of put together: focus on the growth and success of the student, families, teachers, and all individuals who nurture a child have ownership, and to respect for dignity and privacy for students. So that's just an example of agreements. Every classroom K through 8 uses this agreement system. So just let's talk first about the availability of our student success group. In K through 2, Sally Peterson is available daily. Janelle Spaniard, our SEL specialist, is on site Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm available Tuesday, Thursday. That means that there's always 2 members of the student support group on a typical school day, able to respond quickly to situations, conduct observations, support teachers, investigate instances. The duties of the student success group can include lunch supervision, classroom supervision, conflict resolution, developing an action plan, and reflections. All these tools will be explained over the course of the presentation. So I know we may have some questions on these, answers forthcoming. So I talked about the agreements, but let's talk about behavior management, starting from preventative and proactive measures. We have whole group SEL supports that include classroom agreements, which I just spoke about, growth mindset, responsive classroom, restorative practices, and general behavior supports. I'll talk a little bit about each of these. So growth mindset is the orientation of a student's attitude towards problem solving and individual agency. It's in contrast with a fixed mindset where students struggle with flexible thinking and have difficulty taking others' perspective and challenges with initiating actions. So responsive classroom is a behavior management toolkit, an approach that's widely used in independent schools. In fact, every elementary setting I've occupied has used this. Adheres to the 3 R's, which are reinforcement, reminders, and redirections. The research is clear that positive reinforcement is the most effective way to increase desirable behavior. Conversely, reminders and redirections should be discrete. Lastly, behavior challenges need to be accompanied by consequences that are equal in proportion to the transgression and related directly to the effect created. For example, if you spill milk, it's like cleaning up your mistake. It'd be cleaning up the mess you make. And so these all belong to responsive classroom. Next, we're going to talk about restorative practice. And this was one of the questions asked in the survey. So restorative practice is another new idea drawing from a growing body of techniques from community healing, cultural practices, prison reform, and progressive education. The focus on restorative practice is on social repair and community. Janelle and I were both supporting restorative practices by facilitating whole group conversations. And we're advising teachers actually, in these conversations to keep track of student concerns on a whiteboard and cross them out as they're resolved. I think that's a very concrete way for students to know what are their problems or communities are having and just see that, we're addressing them one by one. Lastly, I'm going to talk about general behavioral supports. Lastly, I conducted a school-wide examination of kind of the existing great behavior management strategies teachers were already using. I turned it into a document and shared it back. So I just looked at what we're doing great and then shared it widely and broadly with our teaching community. Okay, so next on the staff training. So there are some specialists and administrators who interact with students, either teaching or duty supervision. All staff receive training on yard supervision on our most recent PD day on November 13th. It was led by yours truly. So in addition to the presentation, I created training material and guides of hard copies for teachers available on site, and visuals are posted outside doors to our outdoor play area. We found that the outdoor play area is where most incidents happen. How do I know that? Well, that's because of instance observation forms. So all the school adults are able to record observations or instances. These are digital forms, and once one is filled out, all relevant stakeholders are automatically forwarded the information. So for Fell Street, that includes Federico Lentini, Sally Peterson, Janelle Spanier, Savannah Armstrong, as well as myself. So even if I am off site, I'm alerted to the incident and can follow up when I'm next on campus. The digital data collection also allows us to observe trends such as parts of days and locations that are higher risk. So obviously shared a lot of information, and we also, let me just check to see if there's any comments. Fantastic. Doesn't look like anything's going on so far. Okay, good. So I've obviously shared a lot of information. So we're about to enter kind of the most important part of the conversation, which is the big bulk of our conversation, which is talking about the tiers of intervention. I just want to talk briefly about the methodology, and we'll take a look at what that looks like. So the methodology for creating these tiers of interventions. I cross-analyzed the policies that are existing in our family handbook. I looked at classroom observations I had from this year and last year. I did some instant audits from this year specifically, as well as I looked at current research. So, and I replicated the format used by the response to intervention model that's used for academic intervention. And I adapted this particular model from the behavior interventional specialist, Dr. Jennifer Rodriguez, who I previously worked with in New York City. So here it is. A lot of information. We're going to walk through this, but here we go. All right, how are we feeling? By show of thumb scale, your thumb up being like pretty good, middle, down. How are we feeling so far, just to get a read of the pulse? We're feeling pretty good? Okay, thank you for the positive
You're doing
feedback.
great, Peter. Just keep going. Let's go over this. This is the most important piece.
Fantastic. I time my speech, so I'm at 25 minutes, so we'll leave. Like I have it. I'm running on rails, folks.
That's the heart of the presentation. Keep going.
You're doing great, Peter, as always.
Yeah, inhale, exhale. Come on, one deep breath, please.
No, I'm doing fine on my second cup of tea. So let's get right to this. All right. So this is our tiers of intervention, and I just want to be clear what it is. I kind of took a lot of our information and gave it a visual form. Nothing here is, I'm not imposing any new practices or policies. Many of them I inherited or kind of existed previous to me. I thought what was important was put it into a visual format that's clear and concise for both families as well as students. And I'm going to talk about how it's going to be implemented in the classroom as well. So on the left is the pyramid is 3 tiers. Below the pyramid, you can see if you can see my mouse, are the whole group SEL supports I mentioned. Tier 1 are incidents that trigger the system. So behaviors include defiance, disrespect, unsafe behavior, verbal aggression, physical aggression, emotional outbursts, refusal to do classwork. So moving up, we have tier 2. Tier 2 is a continued pattern of behavior from tier 1, in addition to kind of single instances of verbal racism, sexism, other prejudice, vandalism, property damage, unannounced classroom departure. And tier 3 is continued behavior from tier 2. So that's what we're looking at. And students kind of move through it as a gradation. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the school response gradient. So each tier has an inventory for immediate responses and continued responses. These can be regarded as, I guess, traditionally as consequences in my experience. So families seek immediate responses, which align with the research demonstrating that immediate and contingent consequences are effective. Schools, on the other hand, seek continued responses, which tries to shape behavior over time. Because to be quite honest, a single interventions rarely shape behavior. So you need continued support. So these both must exist and this is bore up from the research. So tier 1's immediate responses include reminders and redirections. This is from the responsive classroom, as well as a mindful moment and the wave and wave out system. I'm going to be speaking about the wave and wave out system because that was a direct question. in a moment. So we use the mindful moment instead of the word timeout because the purpose is to have students independently use de-escalation skills. So students are given specific prompts during mindful moments, such as taking deep breaths or observing your classmates' behavior, rather than focus on time and removal from an activity. So we advocate away from using the word timeout and just try to be very explicit with how the students, what they should be doing in these moments. One family asked about de-escalation zones. So the de-escalation zones can be found near each classroom, library, or in the hallway where the student is visible from the main office on the second floor and visible from the student support, student success group office on the third floor. So there's like these tiny morbidone and these chairs where students can, de-escalate with a little bit more privacy, but still be under supervision of adults. There also are benches outside in the play area and our 3 designated zones of play. With regard to the family of questions about the wave out system, I'd like to speak, just going to speak to it. It's a system we borrowed from Synergy, an independent school in the mission. The wave and wave out system, I would say it's one of the things that makes it effective, there's a kinesthetic component. So students are asked to like stand up and kind of do something to accompany whatever, as serving as a reminder. So I think that's really great for young children, having that kinesthetic component. And it's similar, it functions similarly to the redirect and reminders from responsive classroom. The other benefit of the wave out system, it's a tiered system. So you first get a wave and then you get a wave out. I'm going to speak briefly about some of the trade-offs. So it's public and its effective decreases with age. So for example, we don't use the wave out system in middle school. It weakens due to the social developments of a child. I will say last year, Corey, Andre, and Alice, our 4th grade teachers, last year adapted the wave out system to great effect just before the pandemic. The students actually helped design a system that functioned almost exactly like the wave in wave out using this online tool, Class Dojo. So I've actually used Class Dojo previously. I think it can be a very innovative tool to use. Tier 1's continued responses include check-ins. So these are individual or group observations, conflict resolution. So classrooms have their own conflict manager as a class job, as well as a reflection forum. We focus during classroom resolution that students use iMessages. So iMessages are kind of firmly place the individual as an agent of change. What you may notice when you ask children during conflict resolutions, they focus on what other children do. They're not like, oh no, he did that or she did that. Or we want children to talk about their, where are they, what did they do? So we use the, what's called iMessages. Janelle advocates from Dr. Becky Kennedy's, the AVP system, which is acknowledge, validate, and permit. So that's how we approach conflict resolution. So we are now moving to tier 2. So tier 2's immediate response is a family communication. So additionally, it could lead to a loss of privileges. These privileges are outlined below. You can see they're under gray, and if you can see my mouse hovering, that's where they are at. So these privileges could be a preferred play area, outdoor zone, or duration of playtime. That is also tiered. I would say that preferred play, let's kind of loss of that, then the outdoor zone, then playtime. I generally err on trying to give children as much playtime as possible. I also, I know in some schools they might say, hey, if you're not behaving, read a book. I also definitely don't advocate for that because I don't think reading should be seen as punishment. So you won't see that kind of thing on a system I develop. And then the outdoor area, if you don't know, there are 3 different zones. There's a concrete patio, play structures, as well as a sports court. So those are the zones of play outside. Let's see. Let's see. So one family shared the possibility of switching recess time if incidents are more frequent in the afternoon. So one thing I just quickly want to say, I can't answer that question until I look more closely at the data. My instinct is to be very careful when changing schedules, as the schedule change itself could be a source of behavior instances as a response to change, but I will definitely look at the data. So I appreciate that question. Tier 2's continued responses are follow-up meetings with families, restorative practices, community service, and an action plan. So the action plan is a week-long agreement between student, teacher, and family. Each day, the student teacher sign off on how the student's day went, and the family signs it and returns it to school. So the action plan's efficacy relies heavily on family communication, and I've personally witnessed it as an intervention that reduces a child's challenging behavior. It is highly contingent on family, school, student being completely aligned. So that's one thing that kind of necessary component. All right, we're moving to tier 3. So tier 3 is accompanied by a request for a family meeting, and the student may have to meet with a member of the student support group. I guess this could be traditionally thought as being sent to the principal, I guess, in our time and age. I do think it's important for the student meeting to happen, because sometimes what I find is a lot of children, they need a lot of, they may have attention-seeking behavior, and so that one-on-one type of adult can be helpful. And it also serves for us as a student support success group to do a lot of information gathering. So I think that that's a crucial component. I generally don't view this as punitive or consequence. I just want to open it up as like, I want to learn as much as I can about this child in these meetings. So that's the way I would approach it. So on the continued support is the development of a student success plan, which is a highly individualized action plan with annual goals. So we move from weekly to annual. The behavior trackers are similar to an action plan from tier 2, but the intervals are much shorter. So I might analyze a children's behavior on an hour or class to class basis rather than a whole day. And it's associated with a strong incentive at home, like choosing a family activity, movie night, or favorite food. So this draws from the field of applied behavior analysis, and it represents their most restrictive intervention. It essentially provides a child extrinsic motivation to shape intrinsic motivation over time. It takes complete alignment with the family and school. It's particularly effective with students who are very concrete thinkers or rigid or need explicit support of adopting social clues. I mean, once we get to this level, there's going to be, there will be enough conversation. All the stakeholders will be adequately caught up to speed, as is the nature of, the support. So I'm going to pause here to catch my breath. I covered a lot of information. The plan is to share this presentation and all materials. So let's see. I just want to do a quick check. Looking pretty okay. Fantastic. So let's see what this looks like in action. So here's the tiers. You're going to see a couple of things highlighted, and I'll go ahead and explain what this means. So I like to show how the tiers of intervention look like in action. This will also address the family who asked in the survey how consequences are explained to students. First, the visual. This visual, I plan on sharing with students prior to Thanksgiving break. Students are actually primed that a future talk like this would happen, and the visuals are coming. So I already had the talk before the talk, which, is coming. I support teacher using this tool. I actually piloted in 2 classrooms, which is where, which was very helpful. I did this during the last couple of weeks before the break. So I think one of the best ways to use this tool is to kind of have it printed on the whiteboard so children can see it. I always think that making it visual is great. I also think that, these can be like individual papers or leaflets that can be associated with certain students, as in this case, you'll see, where you kind of circle it and you can show students, hey, this is where you're at. This is what we did. Now we're here. This is what we did. So in this example, the 2nd grade student, Peter Kim, so the student we're dealing with, his name is Peter Kim, that's me. I was defiant and dishonest, and you can see that happened on October 30th. It's been highlighted in tier 1 and dated as well. So kind of we're tracking the date and what we're doing. And then you can see on the school response side that the school responses are similarly documented, both immediate and continued. All right, so unfortunately, Peter Kim was having trouble on November 15th. So on November 15th, Peter's behavior escalated tier 3 through continued defiance. It is similarly dated and highlighted. The family was communicated on that day, and the action plan was communicated. And looks like there was also some loss of privileges, and the specific privilege was preferred play centers. So we're now using this as a forum just to track ours, but I also think this has a really great functional use to the child as well, just to know where they are. So this is the tiers in action. Let's see. I guess I can have it hang on the slide. The next thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit about child development. And how are we doing on time? Okay, I got to speed it up. All right, here we go, child development. So one family sharing communication regarding instance, sharing about instances even if their child is not involved, so they could follow up at home. So I'm going to talk about that, but I also want to use this opportunity to segue to talk about child development and perspective taking in young children and the role of adults. So Jean-Luc Piaget talks about the stages of development in children. So all our students in K-2 are between the pre-operational stage, which is from toddler to 7, and the concrete operational stage, which is age 7 through 11. So in the pre-operational stage, our children are thinking and behaving intuitionally, not logically, and cause and effect is not quite clear. And then children, this is demonstrated by this like 3 mountains task that was done in the 1940s, but this is something that we know that children struggle with at this age. In the concrete operational stage, right around the age of 7, 8, one of the greatest children then learn about perspective taking, and they're more firm in cause and effect. So one of the greatest challenges with this age group is that children live in a subjective reality. And just analyze the instance from this year and last year. What young children are generally accurate about is that incidents happen. They're usually pretty accurate about that. What they're less accurate about is who involved, their own involvement, the time of instance, and what happened. So that's to say that the details aren't quite as accurate. So the broader goal here, knowing what we know about child development and knowing what we know about accuracy of information recall, is that we're trying to move children from a subjective reality to a shared reality. So I think that's one of our greatest goals conceptually when dealing with these conflicts, because children are all coming with their individual subjective realities. So the research illuminates 2 key findings. One I already spoke of. Consequences need to be administered immediately and consistently at first, and then faded to intermittent reinforcement. And then 2 is that shaping behavior takes time, as it's easier to shape a younger child's behavior. So this kind of underpins the whole rationale behind the immediate and continued response in the tiers. Just think about our own lives as adults trying to get into shape by signing up for a gym. So consistent repeated behavior needs to happen before it internalizes as meaningful long-term change. It's almost analogous to adopting a lifestyle. And I speak as someone who's thrown money away on gym memberships for year after year. So it's hard. You have to commit to behavior over time. That's what shaping behavior is. Single intervention, immediate is good in response to the instant, but if we're going to see some meaningful change, it has to be consistent. So this is where I'm going to circle back to talking about the role of adults. So I focus on the word guidance with adults in terms of being a role model. So do what you say what you do. And what I most often say to elementary students during behavior challenges is this: I don't care if you make a mistake, because we all take a step back from time to time. Just make sure you're facing the right way. So this is probably the thing I say the most when I'm sitting down with kids. So tying this back to school sharing details in every instance, it's not something I would necessarily advise. One, because of just how fuzzy details are, but I think that we can use this opportunity to ask some, to help promote perspective taking children. And I'm drawing from kind of some of the things that Sherry Glukoff-Wong said in her speech. So as adults, we need to be mindful that like some of the incentives we establish at home. So if we give children more attention when they talk about negative instances, we'll find by May that that will be all they share about. Attention is really currency to children. They really need adult attention, and they'll take positive or negative. And because we know second-hand accounts haven't been particularly reliable, what I think would be better in these situations would be asking things like, what does the person's facial expression look like when this instance happened? What does their body language look like? How do you think they felt in that moment? So really try to promote that perspective taking. I think a big part of that is being able to read facial cues and body language. I think these are really crucial, essential skills in this age group. So Sherry Glukoff-Wong says, get more curious, continue the story. So the Dr. Becky Kenny says, ask more, tell less. So keep in mind that perspective taking, cause and effect are cognitive mechanisms that are developing and continue development. So these questions help to scaffold children from one stage of development to the other through what Vygotsky calls the zone of proximal development. So, and I just want to end with kind of this other anecdote, and I swear I'm done. So I'm just thinking of my own child experience. I can think of a number of friends who are particularly defiant or difficult at school. So students who push back on teachers or got a detention here or there, or just kind of seem to have one foot in trouble all the time. And these are like my close friends. I also want to reiterate. And they all ended up as charming and successful adults. And so through the guidance of adults, they were able to harness kind of best parts of their contrarian nature, being willful and constantly questioning, and they use it to their advantage. And so, these traits are a boon to society, but they're also a challenge in a classroom, just speaking as a teacher. So that when we think about our children, that there's often, when I think about like the students who are really easy going to classroom and kind of listen well to teachers, they're great in the classroom, but then for those students, I worry about their resilience when they meet challenges or when tasks are unclear. And so I always kind of frame things as having two sides, like I'm hyper focused in my activities, but I also have this quality of me that I can kind of become addicted. Like I have an addictive side to my focus, my work ethic. And you can see how when you put things on extreme, how even our best traits can become like our worst nightmares and vice versa. And I think a lot of child development is kind of knowing what your traits are and trying to harness them to your advantage. So last thing, one parent asked about screen time at home. So it's challenging to incorporate those responses into this presentation. So I will follow up with you directly. Okay, so I'm leaving how much time? 7 minutes. So, and I know I've received some questions. Before I end, here is upcoming event. So English literacy and language, that's on December 8th. If you enjoyed kind of my research, my analysis, I do something similar for our English language arts program. So I actually invite you to all join if you like hearing me talk and drone on. And Janelle mentioned that there's a SEL Parent Education Spotlight that's happening in January for further information on the SEL support. I'm going to leave the screen up so you have my contact information. And let's see what I see that the comments are filling up. So I'm going to try to address these in the order they came in. All right. Before I end, thank you everyone for lending me your ears and being an amazing audience. And I appreciate, and I'm going to try to go ahead and attack these questions. So.
Thank you, Peter. As you're looking at the questions, I just wanted to talk a little bit more about kind of the repair piece, and as parents reaching out to me, and it's worked really well if you can send an email and there's something so I coach SEL skills. So I want to support your child in building these skills and being proactive and being an effective communicator. And I think the iMessage tool is really helpful in identifying how someone's feeling. And then when it happens specifically, a lot of kids will say like, I'm sad. They're not able to dive deep into it, but they can be specific on what happened. And then there can be a repair and a conversation. It's really hard when you get home and you're like, now what? Like I hear this and now what do I do? So that's the piece where I can help. A quick 5 minutes makes a difference. Kids need to be seen and heard. And if they have that opportunity, I can't even tell you how many times if I see kids exchange these words that they are like, they're all better because, and I say, did you hear that? I heard that. And it's the reflective language, and it's a practice that I think is essential. And I know as a parent too, the ask more, tell less. I love Dr. Becky Kennedy. I highly recommend her. She's got great strategies, a lot of SEL, like concrete strategies to work with your kids. But just keep that curiosity and keep them talking. And before you know it, and I know Sherry Glukoff-Long said this, it turns around and they end up problem solving. They're just like, oh, well, maybe I'll talk with Janelle tomorrow and I can have, we can do an iMessage, and they get those moments that everything's so fast paced that we can pause and really, and also they're cooled down. So they're not as activated when they have had time at home to kind of process and regroup. So anyway, those are just little things I want to chime in about. I hope they're helpful. And I really look forward to sharing more about the SEL tools and what we're implementing and sharing the curriculum on January 8th. Thank you.
Okay, so I had some questions I would like to quickly respond to. So Fong asked about talking about the wave out system within the realm of restorative practice. So the way I view the wave and wave out is it's a bit more restrictive than our remind and redirections because of the kinesthetic component, but it is kind of but then it's less, I guess, community oriented than something like conflict resolution. And I think that the wave out system might be used due to constraints of like time of the teacher because the conflict resolution takes a lot of focus from the individual adults. So I would place in between those systems. So Mike Corin asked about what is it determines moving from tier 1 to tier 2? Just from kind of the data collection perspective, I always think of 3 data points as indicating a trend, but I would say usually on the second or third instances of something happening is where I think a child would move to tier 2. I mean, a single instance during a month wouldn't really do something. We all have our bad days. And generally, I try to give at least some windows. So if an instance happens in November and then again in May, I wouldn't say there's a pattern. But let's say we're collecting with a 14-day school period. I think then that becomes more significant. So I think that they're time bound as well. I guess I could concretize what those windows are. So that's something I'm looking into. So Fang, yes, another question about the descriptive language of the framework or be more simple for students. So what I think you're trying to say is that pyramid going to be adapted with different language for young children? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I think that when there's like the word of defiant, I asked another question, I feel like that's very deficit based. And then when approaching young folks, being able to pivot to the asset based language a little bit more. So it seems like the language is complex.
Yes, so I do acknowledge that. I know on the consequences side, that's all languages students should be familiar with. The reflection forums and action plan, for example, they all predate me, my involvement in La Escuela. I think that like in kindergarten, obviously the pyramid's not gonna make sense due to reading levels, so pictures can be used. I think second graders do have the reading skills to do it. I think some of the language is going to have to be adapted. So to your question, I think for the students, it's gonna be shaped a little. David, based on, okay. So, so in talking with the waves, it seems like there's a kind of like a mixed feeling about waves. I think, what's interesting from the experience last year and just in response to you, David, is like the fourth graders, they basically designed their own system and it's just another version of wave, but they didn't call it a wave. So maybe one element of it is that wave and wave out has kind of taken on a negative connotation of our student body. So I do encourage teachers, if they can, to kind of use that same system. The system itself is quite robust, but I think it's gotten to a point where certain students are just like, oh, the wave. And I think that Class Dojo, for example, which is a bit more positive oriented, but it is tech based. So I know that there's also, other challenges of rolling out tech, but I think that my preference is always, and what I advocate for teachers, and I think that's also less restrictive, is to use the reminders and redirections because they're more discrete. I would actually say that should happen before the wave and wave out. And that's what I see is happening in most classrooms anyways.
And Peter, this is Vale. I just wanted
Hello.
to add to the history of the wave and wave out system. This is actually a system that we got from the Synergy School in San Francisco. They've been working on this for 40 years. Synergy is a small, very progressive, independent co-op of teachers in San Francisco. So I think it's as kind as it gets with discipline. So at the same time, logical consequences are an important part of what we do. And I think the wave out system was precisely for the opposite reason. Waving a child out means that the teacher discreetly tells signals to the child that they should just leave momentarily and then come back or go and sit in a different spot, versus, calling on that child, stopping what they're doing, calling on the child in front of the whole class. So the idea is actually less shame, but also like a clear message that there is going to be a logical consequence to behavior, but without, like pointing the finger. Now, sometimes that may happen differently in a classroom setting if the child is maybe younger, or, by the time they get a bit older, they know what it's like and they know that one look from the teacher is enough. And sometimes they just need that reset. A wave can just be, just get up, go touch the door, go sit in a different place. This is in a environment where you're maybe in circle time, non-COVID times. So I just wanted to just give a bit of a history of the wave out system. We talked to Synergy for a long time, way back. And we at the time had also done a presentation for parents, which we can do again.
Okay, I just want to jump in real quick. I do see that I have quite a captive audience. I'm also teaching at 11:30, so I do have a hard cutoff. I want to say 9 minutes, but I think I can get through at least a couple more of these. So Mike Korn asked about follow-up meeting to dive deeper into this topic. That's something I personally am open to speaking more about this, especially, connecting it to behavior practice at home. I personally, I always say I'm a teacher first and a researcher second. I genuinely enjoy doing these deep dives and investigations. So it's something that, like it's an aspect of my role as a learning specialist that I quite enjoy. Second only to teaching. So I'm personally interested. I'm not the only voice in this decision, but just putting my name out there. Any tier 1 response or measures suitable for use at home, if you can provide more detail on how they're implemented. I think that elements of these definitely can be used at home. I think I'm gonna have to think more about it, so that could be a follow-up. Let's see, I do want to say, just going back to David, just about wave and wave outs, because there's a lot of questions about wave and wave outs. There's a classroom this year in particular where waves and wave outs have been pretty effective. So I think that giving teachers kind of a variety of tools, like an inventory tools, means that they can find a tool that works best in their class. Every class, every year is a little bit different for a variety of reasons. A lot of it has to do with classroom composition and where children are in child development. So you might find that the group that responded well to waves, the next year won't be, and then we'll use more restorative practice and vice versa. But I think that's a crucial component, is giving teachers the tools and then seeing how effective the tools are. Some years, some tools just won't be as effective. And I think that, that's the nature of the beast. Let's see. So with regards to being able to implement that at home, I'm gonna have to do some further investigations. Let's see. Good to have more Q&A, especially with kids being at home. Okay, so yes, I think so. I have a survey I filled out just to get feedback on the presentation, but I also have another Q&A component. So I think Fede will be sharing that with families so that follow-up questions can be put there. I know that there's a lot of questions. On waves, can you go over how they work? Does it start in K? So from me, okay, sorry. So it's a tiered system. So first the students get a wave and then they get a wave out. And so it moves from one to another. And I mentioned that there's a kinesthetic component. So in a traditional reminder, I might just say it verbally, or I might have a nonverbal cue. In waves, there's a kinesthetic component where the child is physically moving their body. And then following the wave out leads to a reflection form. So I think that the benefits are as tiered. I think for young children who are, I know as children get older, they're more conscious of social dynamics. I think for kindergarten, for example, there's less influence of social so it could, so that in kindergarten, for example, it could be effective. But as I mentioned, the success varies, by classroom to classroom, year to year, but it is available as a tool for all grades within Fell Street. Could we get the recordings of the talks that Cherry Glukov-Wong has done with La Scuola parents? So that is, I know last year she provided a talk about resilience, and I know it was recorded, and I can follow up with the leadership to see if they have that available. So thank you for that question, Whitney. Are there resources such as websites, books, and readings you can share for families to get more familiar with the approach and implement some of the language practices at home? Okay, so it's becoming clear to me that a follow-up talk might be happening. One focused more on tying the bridge between behavior management from school to home. So I'm noticing a pattern. I don't have an answer to that, Rosella, but I'm gonna stick a pin in this. All right, I'm on to the last one. Oh, I made it through all the questions with 4 minutes to spare. I'm going to stop the screen share so I can see all your lovely faces. Hopefully we're all smiling, or some of us. And hi, yes, thank you for any other questions while I have us here. that didn't make their way to comments. I know I hit you with what probably felt like an avalanche of information. So one thing I do want to reiterate is that in kind of my investigation, it's like these are what a lot of these systems already existed. So I didn't actually have to teach or train anything, teachers on anything new. But what I am going to have to kind of, what is going to have to happen, like a next concrete step, is just familiarizing all teachers with how these systems interact with one another, which is why I made this visual, because they're all there in our handbook and all currently being used in one form or other. But I think just giving it form was my main objective here. I know that, there are elements that feel disparate, but as I continue my investigation, I saw where the connections were between them. And my hope is that, I just hope that this offered some clarity, and that see, without a script, it's much harder to speak. All right.
So the question, sorry, Peter, the question on Sherry's recordings. I don't know if Sally's on this call, but Fede, you want to reach out to Sally and find out where they were stored. They were recorded and we had sent them out.
They were actually in the Bollettino. So
yeah, they were sent in the Bollettino. So let's see if they are on our YouTube channel or on something else. I think they may not be, they may not be on the website because that is open to the public and we just reserve them for our parents. And so you can find out and then we can share them with everyone. We definitely recorded them all. And for those of you who may wonder who Sherry is, Sherry Gluckhoff-Twong is a psychotherapist. She's an expert in child's behavior, really very well known in the Bay Area, like an authority really in the field. And we've worked with her for years at La Scuola. So she has been giving great talks to parents on how to communicate with your child and how to handle with behavior challenges and she's really great. So highly recommend watching it if you haven't before.
Yeah, she's like my Obi-Wan Kenobi. I kind of look, sometimes I'll email her if I have my own questions. So if you're curious about her, like I will ask her questions when I'm confused.
No, I know, and she really takes an approach which really helps us as parents in the long term. Really making sure that that we support our children in a way that's not just for the now, but it's now until high school and college. And so I think this is something truly unique. Obviously, she's really experienced. She has grown children of herself and now grandchildren. And so I think she's been in the Bay Area space for many, many years. And so she also sees what works and what doesn't work as we support our children in becoming adults, like resilient adults that are going to be able to navigate the challenges out there. But thank you for this many, many questions. And I think there were a few questions about a follow-up. And I'm sure that, Peter and Fede would be happy to provide that.
Yeah, I just want to actually share with you that, thank you so much, Peter and Janelle, for, leading this conversation. Thank you all for, making the questions. Is a system that, of course, need to be agreed, on both sides in the sense, of the school and teacher and children and you as a parents. So I would love to have follow-up conversation, maybe at the end of January. I will reach out to you. So if you guys have any question around this, how it's been working, and any things that you want to share with us, we are here. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Grazie a voi. I know Peter need to go teach in 5 minutes. Grazie.
It's true, I do.
Yeah, exactly.